They smile like they've never hidden anything. They compliment with precision, as if reading from a memorized script. They're always there at just the right moments, saying exactly the right words. But something inside you senses it. There's something wrong here. A silent tension, a nameless discomfort, like your intuition is trying to scream from behind a locked door. Carl Jung would understand this better than anyone, because it's not always the other person who's deceiving. Sometimes it's our unconscious that allows the theater. This feeling of being manipulated, even when everything seems normal, doesn't come out of nowhere. It's like there's an invisible magnet attracting the same type of person over and over again. Fake people don't show up randomly. They're drawn by something you don't see yet. Jung's shadow warns us, what we repress also manifests on the outside. And this pattern, as painful as it may be, is more about you than about the other person. The key isn't in distrusting others, but in decoding what you yourself are projecting. And this isn't about blame, it's about awareness. You've probably noticed, the kinder you are, the more some people approach to drain you. It's like your light calls to the unresolved darkness in others. But what if I told you that this light is also mixed with old traumas? That there are invisible wounds shaping your relationships? What you don't heal, you repeat. And what repeats exhausts you. But understanding this dynamic is just the beginning. Because the most disturbing question is still to come. Why do you attract fake people repeatedly? It's not bad luck, generic karma, or the universe testing you. It's something deeper, almost imperceptible, a psychological reflection that comes from within. Carl Jung used to say, what we don't face in the unconscious comes back to us as destiny. And this destiny, when ignored, transforms into an emotional loop. You think you chose that friendship, that relationship, but actually, you were chosen by a silent pattern living within your shadow. This is where things get dark. When you don't understand your own pattern, the genuine person continues to be a magnet for toxic relationships. Jung's shadow carries exactly what you want to hide: insecurities, traumas, wounds of rejection, need for affection, and even that hidden desire to be accepted at any cost. And these unrecognized parts end up shaping your connections, as if screaming to the world, deceive me, but accept me. Fake people hear this, even though you never say a word. The trap is sophisticated because the unconscious knows how to be seductive. You feel affinity, feel like you've found someone who gets you. But over time, the pattern reveals itself. Empty promises, subtle manipulation, criticism disguised as care. And even realizing it, you find yourself repeating the same story. What is it in you that seems to invite these characters onto the stage of your life? The answer starts with something we all use, sometimes without realizing, but which, according to Jung, can be the gateway to all this chaos. The persona, as Carl Jung defined it, is the mask we wear to navigate the world, a social adaptation, an armor of acceptance. It's not inherently bad. Everyone has one. But the problem arises when this mask becomes the only visible face. When a person needs to always be pleasant, understanding, perfect, they don't just attract applause, they also attract emotional predators. Fake people sniff out this type of persona like finding a comfortable hideout to manipulate without being noticed. When you hide your true emotions to keep peace, when you say yes even when you want to say no, when you try to please everyone all the time, your mask becomes so convincing that even you don't realize how much you're erasing yourself. And the more you erase yourself, the more you become food for toxic relationships. It's like saying, without words, do whatever you want with me, as long as I'm not rejected. This behavior, however unconscious it may be, is exactly what opens space for unconscious self-sabotage. And see how this disguises itself. Excessive compliments, promises of deep connection, accelerated intimacy that seems like a dream, but isn't real. Fake people use your persona against you. They approach smiling, but they see your neediness. They play with your boundaries, test how far you'll go for acceptance. And when they realize your intuition is blocked, they advance. But behind this smiling persona, there's something deeper that needs to be looked at, something that silently screams to be healed. And that's where the real danger lies. Behind every well-constructed persona, there's an unresolved wound, a pain that often comes from childhood, rejection, abandonment, constant criticism. It could have been an absent father, an emotionally cold mother, or a school where being yourself was synonymous with punishment. These experiences don't disappear. They hide. They hide in Jung's shadow. And there they continue operating, like hidden scriptwriters of your emotional choices. And you know what the biggest problem is? This wound doesn't stay silent. It sends out a call. It's a subtle but powerful call. Fake people hear this in a way you don't. While you try to show your best, the unconscious is saying, please, accept me, love me, see me. And this is an invitation to manipulation. Toxic relationships feed on this invisible request. And even without meaning to, you hand over the key to your vulnerability to those who know how to use it against you. Not because you're weak, but because unrecognized pain still commands your emotional surrender. It might seem like an exaggeration, but think, how many times have you ignored that initial discomfort? That strange feeling at the beginning of a relationship? Often that discomfort was your intuition trying to protect you. But the wound speaks louder. It's in a hurry for love, thirsty for belonging. And in this silent desperation, you open the door to those who only want to take advantage. The social mask hides the face, but the wound exposes the soul. And when this wound isn't healed, it makes you repeat and repeat and repeat. But there's something even deeper, the way this wound creates illusions about who's in front of you. Carl Jung warned, everything we ignore within ourselves ends up being projected onto others. And it's not just pain that we project, it's also desire, neediness, the fantasy of salvation. When you attract fake people, you might be unconsciously seeing in them something you need to find within yourself. They become distorted mirrors of your own shadow. At first, they seem incredible. They say exactly what you want to hear. They show themselves as sensitive, deep, almost mystical. But don't be fooled. This is a reflection of your own illusion. This is the trap of psychological projection. You see in the other a savior, when actually they're just occupying the role your psyche designated. And the deeper the wound, the more intense the projection. You start ignoring signs, justifying behaviors, romanticizing abusive attitudes, because the projected pain finds echo in those who know how to imitate it. Fake people use this as strategy. They don't need to be everything they claim to be, they just need to seem like it. And while you idealize, they manipulate. While you trust, they control. A practical example? Relationships where, right from the start, everything is too intense. Promises, plans, vows of spiritual connection. This isn't love, it's overlapping shadows. Your need to be saved meets their ability to pretend they're exactly that. But over time, the veil falls, and you realize you fell in love with a reflection, not a person. And the most painful part, you gave everything based on a psychic lie. But do you notice when you're repeating this, or has it already become an emotional addiction? It might seem strange to think someone could become addicted to pain, but when emotional trauma isn't healed, it becomes a type of comfort zone, uncomfortable but familiar. Jung would call this unconscious repetition. The unconscious seeks to repeat the pain, hoping to heal it, even if it destroys us in the process. Toxic relationships end up seeming normal. You get involved with fake people not because you like it, but because, without realizing it, your emotional system was shaped to recognize rejection as affection. This addiction is silent. You miss the chaos when you find someone healthy. Calm seems strange. Affection seems fake. because your brain is conditioned to associate love with confusion, instability, absence. And this isn't romanticism, it's emotional neuroscience. It's the circuit of unconscious self-sabotage in full operation. Even when the person says, "This time will be different," their emotional structure tends to recreate the same patterns. Only the name, face, address changes. The plot is always the same. An example of this? Relationships where you only feel alive when you're jealous, insecure, on constant alert. When the person disappears, you go into despair, but when they come back, you feel an almost chemical relief, like a dose of dopamine. This is emotional addiction. It's the body begging for answers that only the unconscious has. And while this isn't seen clearly, intuition remains silent. And here comes the next point. How the body warns, but you learn to ignore it. Fake people are experts at making you feel special until you stop serving their script. In the beginning, it's like enchantment. They shower you with compliments, admiration, say they've never met anyone like you. It's fast, intense, involving. And that's where the danger lies. You confuse intensity with truth. Carl Jung already warned about this, and what's too fast usually comes from the persona, not the self. And when connection is based on the persona, the fall comes right after. The need for validation is one of the most common gaps in Jung's shadow. When someone desperately needs to be seen, recognized, valued, they end up becoming hostage to those who offer this in artificial doses. Fake people operate exactly at this point. They create a cycle of emotional reinforcement. First, they elevate you, then they ignore you. And this constant up and down triggers your oldest wounds, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being enough. And without realizing it, you do everything to recover that lost compliment. Want to see an example? That friendship or relationship where you're only valued when you're available, smiling, agreeing. But as soon as you show tiredness, sadness, or your own opinion, the person changes, gets cold, distances themselves, or even attacks you. This isn't love, it's emotional control disguised as affection. And while you constantly seek to be accepted, you keep burying who you really are. And each time this happens, something in you goes silent. And in this silence, intuition loses strength. But the body, the body still knows. There's a type of person who attracts dysfunctional relationships for a different reason. They don't just want to be loved, they want to save. This is the wounded healer archetype, so discussed in Carl Jung's ideas. The person sees the other's pain and feels they need to help. They think that if they give enough love, the other will change, will improve, will transform. But this often is nothing more than psychological projection, because deep down, they're the ones who need to be healed, but prefer to heal the other first. This pattern is dangerous because it seems noble. You tell yourself, they're only like this because they suffered. They act this way because no one loved them right. And with this, you justify abuse, tolerate lies, normalize disrespect, because you feel necessary. Fake people quickly perceive this and exploit it. They leave clues of fragility, tell touching stories, create a narrative where you become the hero. And at the same time, they become an emotional burden, trapping you in the illusion that without you, they'll crumble. Want to see this in practice? You're always trying to understand the other, justify their behavior, study traumas that aren't even yours. You read psychology books, watch videos about narcissism, learn everything except how to protect yourself. You sacrifice yourself for relationships that only drain you, and worse, you blame yourself when the relationship sinks, as if you failed in the rescue mission. But saving others when you yourself are drowning is the shortest path to losing yourself. And in the middle of this, your intuition is almost mute. Intuition doesn't shout, it whispers. But when you spend too much time trying to please, understand, and fix others, that whisper becomes imperceptible. Carl Jung would say, this is the distancing from the self, when the connection to inner truth breaks. And then what's left is an emptiness you try to fill with validation, with false relationships, with a false sense of purpose. The body starts giving signals: insomnia, anxiety, tightness in the chest, unexplained fatigue. But you keep going, silencing yourself. The cruelest part is that fake people notice this before you do. They know when someone has lost their way. They know when your intuition is weakened. And that's why they get close. They know they won't be questioned, that you'll justify strange behaviors with phrases like, "Nobody's perfect," or "He's going through a tough time." Jung's shadow feeds on this disconnection. The more you deny what you feel, the more vulnerable you become to emotional manipulation. An example? When you feel something's wrong, but you don't have proof, and then you decide to ignore it. Months later, the truth comes out. You remember that discomfort, that chill, that something off you felt, but didn't listen to. This isn't coincidence, it's blocked intuition. And as long as it's ignored, you'll keep walking in the dark, stumbling over the same patterns. But the curious thing is that even fake people can have a function within this maze, and that's where the real lesson of the shadow comes in. As painful as it may seem, each fake person who crosses your path is revealing a part of you that still lives in the shadows. Jung's shadow isn't just what we hide from others. It's mainly what we hide from ourselves, what we deny, repress, judge unworthy. And when we don't look at this, the universe finds a way to show us. Through relationships. Fake people aren't accidents. They're distorted reflections of what still needs to be seen with courage. Have you ever stopped to think why certain behaviors irritate you so much? Sometimes what bothers you most in others is what you deny in yourself. The control, the neediness, the manipulation, the fear. Psychological projection creates this game of mirrors. You attract what you don't understand within yourself. And each toxic relationship, however frustrating it may be, carries a hidden message, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Fake people can be disguised masters if you're willing to learn what they're showing you. Imagine someone who always attracts partners who lie. Instead of asking, "Why does everyone lie to me?" the right question would be, in what part of my life do I also use masks? It's uncomfortable, yes, but necessary, because it's in this confrontation with the shadow that the true healing process begins. And only when you face your shadow head-on can you take the next step, the step Jung called the individuation process, where you stop fragmenting yourself and start becoming whole. According to Carl Jung, the true path to inner freedom isn't in being loved, admired, or accepted by everyone, it's in being whole. This is the purpose of the individuation process, integrating everything you are, light and shadow, pain and power, flaws and virtues. It's not about becoming a perfect version of yourself, but rather a true version. When you stop hiding your wounds, they stop being bait. When you accept yourself completely, fake people lose the power to manipulate you. The problem is, we were taught to divide ourselves, to show only what pleases, to hide what scares, to swallow what we feel. This fragmentation creates internal holes. And it's in these holes that toxic relationships settle. Healing doesn't come from pushing others away, but from getting closer to yourself. This requires courage, self-confrontation. It requires looking in the mirror and asking, what in me still seeks approval? What in me still fears being rejected? Questions that don't always have immediate answers, but that open doors. If you want to start this process, try writing a letter to yourself. It doesn't need to be beautiful or positive, just truthful. Say what you feel, unfiltered. This simple practice can reveal layers of your shadow you never noticed. Books like Man and His Symbols by Jung himself, or The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, also help initiate this dive, because only those who dive deep manage to emerge transformed. And when this happens, the type of person you attract also changes. You didn't choose to be hurt. You didn't choose to be manipulated, deceived, or ignored. But now, knowing what you know, choosing to continue in this cycle is different. Carl Jung reminds us that the unconscious governs life until the moment it becomes conscious. From then on, everything changes. Responsibility scares, but also liberates. Because for the first time, you understand you no longer need to attract fake people, that Jung's shadow can be your ally, not your burden, and that your intuition, if reactivated, will guide you like never before. The question that remains is, what are you going to do with all this? Will you continue using the social mask, pretending everything's fine? Or will you allow yourself to be whole, even if imperfect? The individuation process isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You return to the same places, but with a different perspective, with more strength, more clarity, more awareness. Toxic relationships stop being magnets when you stop being invisible to yourself, and the silence of intuition begins to transform into a clear, firm voice that points you toward new paths. Maybe you'll still attract fake people, maybe you'll still deceive yourself, but now you know, now you see. And that's powerful, because when you reveal your true face to the world responds. So tell me, what is your shadow trying to show you now? What in you is still asleep? Start there. If this video made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue your journey. And if you want to go even deeper, watch the video on the end screen. It might be the next step you didn't even know you needed.